So the ANC has always taken quite an an anti-American view in its rhetoric, right? Going back all the way to the time that it was fighting against apartheid when it was close to the Soviet Union, but it's continued that in a lot of ways, even into the 90s and 2000s. Lest we forget, Thabo Mbeki, the former president, uh, basically claimed that American pharmaceutical companies were behind HIV/AIDS the claims on HIV/AIDS, and that's why we didn't need antiretrovirals in the country. So the ANC has always had a very anti-American worldview, but up until very recently, the Americans were pretty keen, I think, to ignore this. And the ANC was keen to not push it sort of too far. It usually stayed in the realm of rhetoric and voting in the UN. In the UN, the ANC tends to vote against the US in most contentious votes. But things seem to be changing now. And I think that's partly because the Americans are having their worldview challenged, but it's also because the ANC is changing the way that it looks at the world and is taking a more ideological stance than it has in the past. So tensions started, I think, to deteriorate around the time that the Russian invasion of Ukraine began, because the ANC, despite its professed neutrality, very much still seems to have its heart on the side of Russia. The ANC was then accused of supplying weapons to Russia, and that hurt relations, but it seemed like it was fixed up and repaired. However, then the ANC decided that it was going to take on Israel in a big way, and there were two key events that hurt the relations with Israel and the United States. The first being the alleged phone call between and Hamas officials just a few weeks after the October 7th massacre. And the second was the South African attempt to take Israel to the International Court of Justice on charges of genocide against the Palestinian people. Now, the relationship between Israel and the US is very close, and particularly within Congress, there's quite a few Congress people who are very supportive of Israel. And so I think this has kind of forced the Americans to, at least some of them, to begin evaluating their relationship with South Africa. For years, they were willing to look past South Africa's rhetoric because they wanted the trade opportunities. They wanted the fact that South Africa was seen as a gateway to influence on the rest of the African continent. And also South Africa had a lot of goodwill overseas, the country of Nelson Mandela and the Rainbow Nation. But as we move further away from that, I think now what's beginning to happen is that both Republicans and Democrats, particularly from the center, are starting to look at South Africa as not so much just a country who they have differences with, and rather as a country that is providing aid and comfort to some of their geopolitical enemies. And therefore, I think that's the impetus behind this review of South Africa's relations with America.
Thank you very much for watching. To access the full video, along with the rest of our CRA analysis, our weekly risk alerts, as well as our macro reviews and our periodic strategic intelligence reports, as well as our briefings, please head to the CRA website linked in the description below and consider subscribing to our services. Until next time, Chris Hattingh here for the Center for Risk Analysis. Take care.